Hello and welcome to another episode of Celebrating Southbridge. I'm Ron San Angelo, the Southbridge Town Manager, and I'm very excited today because I have a special guest that's going to be great, and I'm going to introduce him in a minute. But I want to talk about the issue that we're going to be discussing soon. I kind of want to give a little bit of upfront kind of information so that you, the citizens of the town of Southbridge, are aware of this. As you know, one of the most important issues facing the town of Southbridge is improving our school district and working together, the town and the school system, to do everything we can to provide a quality education for the children of Southbridge. You know, in the last couple of years that I've been here, I've worked really closely with the school receivers, members of the school committee, to do everything we can to build a relationship of trust between our town and the school administration. Particularly, our town council has been tremendously supportive of the school system, trying to give them the needed resources they can to improve the system. Now, you're going to hear all kinds of things from all different kinds of people about what's going on in our school system. I'm going to just tell you what I think from what I see, and I work with the system on a pretty regular basis. You know, the receivers, the past receiver and this receiver, have worked really hard to improve the system. Some of the things that I've seen is improvement in the curriculum, trying to make a better curriculum that more meets the testing requirements of the state, so that when our students go to take those tests, that they have the required curriculum that meets those state requirements. I've seen a tremendous improvement in terms of the staffing. Before the state came in, there was one ESL teacher for both the middle school and the high school. Now they have that more properly staffed, so that our Latino children are getting the education in English that they should be getting. I'm seeing improvements in discipline. I'm seeing the new academy school that's giving specific need to certain types of students. I'm seeing teachers, and I got to tell you, we have most wonderful teachers and administrators that are dedicated to providing quality services for our children. We're seeing the whole new dual language program, which is a tremendous new process to help kids learn both Spanish and English. That's going to be an incentive to bring people back. So when you hear that our school system is getting worse, that to me, truthfully, I don't believe it. I'm seeing right on the, from a day-to-day basis, improvements that are going on. Now, let's not kid ourselves. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to keep moving forward in a positive way, working with the town administration and the school administration to make this system even better, because your kids deserve it. Now, I started this by saying I have a great guest. As you know, we've had a lot of turmoil in terms of transition between, we've had so many different superintendents and so many different business managers, and even the state. We had one receiver, now we had a temporary receiver while we're waiting for another receiver, and now we're getting a new receiver. So there's been some transition. We're losing our high school principal. Transitions are normal, but we need to do better to keep people here for a longer period of time, and that I know is a goal of the state, and it's a goal of mine. So today I'm very proud to introduce my guest. He's our new receiver, very dedicated gentleman. I've had an opportunity to meet with him before this television show. I think he's going to be a tremendous asset to our community, and it's our job to get behind him and support the school system. If you have a problem with the system, you should go right to him, go to his team, make sure that your questions are answered. I know he's going to do that, and I want to welcome you, Dr. Jeffrey Villar, to our town of Southbridge, and I tell you, I'm looking forward to work with you. I've already seen your credentials. I think they're great, and I'm committed to doing everything I can to improve the education system.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the
warm
welcome.
It's great to have you here. I got to tell you, and I love the fact that you have the ability to speak Spanish as well, because as you know, a big percentage of our population is Latino, and they love this whole Spanish, being able to communicate in their own language. Plus, it helps to transition them to the English language. But first, I want to ask you, tell me about what made you decide to come to Southbridge. What is it about this district that excites you where you're willing to take on this challenge?
Sure, thank you. Again, thank you for the warm welcome. Quickly in my background, I've been an educator a real long time now, I guess come on 25 years. My initial teaching was in Hartford Public Schools, where I was a bilingual educator. And for me, that was important because of my family. My father's a Cuban immigrant, and I'm English dominant, but learned Spanish as a kid. It's been a long time for me, but that's an attraction here to be part of my culture, to be engaged in my culture and helping people from my culture. That's why I went into bilingual education to begin with. Later on, through my career, I've served as an assistant principal in schools. I've served as a principal in schools. Then associate superintendent of a relatively large urban school district. then a superintendent in several districts, and then lastly I was the director of a nonprofit that worked on closing the achievement gap, which was really in Connecticut, really focusing on the needs of language minority students, students with impoverished backgrounds, or just challenges, and making sure that they got a fair shake at a high quality education. So all those experiences kind of boiled up to a point in my life, in my career, where I wanted to take what I knew and what I've learned and apply it to a situation where I felt I could walk away 10 years from now, or whatever it's going to take, and say, wow, we made a real big difference. And so I became aware of the state takeover and began to investigate and read about what had happened and saw the leadership turnover. And I knew immediately that if we could instill solid leadership in this district, improvement will be made. So that attracted me right away. Again, candidly, demographically, being Hispanic myself, I think that adds to the flavor of town. Also, having worked in suburban districts, understanding the needs of everybody in the population and trying to be the person to bring us all together and lead us forward. So with the state takeover, I know there are hard feelings among some folks, but at the end of the day, I came here because I'm hoping to work with the leadership team, the town, with the citizens, and help make us all real proud of the schools.
It was interesting. Last night, I attended the school committee meeting for your first meeting, and I listened to the school committee members who are concerned over the history and what's happened in town. And again, I think there's a reluctance that you're the state, the state issue in it. There is, I'm sure, a lot of concern about how school committee members who are elected by the people are now, they don't have the power. The power now rests with the state. And I understand the frustration that must be to an elected official who's come on board. And we have some good school committee members, and I know that they're going to be dedicated to working with you, because at the end of the day, it really isn't about the politics of who's in control. It's really more about how do we improve the quality of education to the kids. And I think that's where we've all got to come together and work together to make that happen. So, it's sort of interesting to watch that dynamic. Immediately in your first meeting, you heard the frustrations of people and the stress of how do we make the system better, and this is what our concerns are. So let's talk about that. I mean, how do you feel that you can work with the school committee? Again, they don't have the power to do things, but they think they're still an important player. How do you plan on working with the school committee to make sure it's a team effort at rebuilding our district?
Well, I come from a place, I operate from the idea that everyone is trying to do what's best. And we all have diverse opinions about what is best. And so the key is, how do you listen, how do you communicate, and then bring people together around a common goal and mission. So I certainly hope, and as I said last night, I want to engage in conversations. I said to one of the members of the school committee that I had a lot to learn from them, because they understand this community, they live in this community. I'm new. So I know I need to hear and listen to folks who understand the culture of the community, the history of the community, what the community values. And I need to translate that, because candidly, I do have to answer to the state too, right? And we have a goal. It's measurable, but it's attainable. And it's attainable if we work together. It'll be attainable more quickly. More kids will benefit, and families will benefit, and the town overall will benefit. So I'm looking forward to getting through the frustration, which is a human, I get it. I'd be frustrated too. Get through that, and let's talk about some solutions. Let's talk about how we can work together so we can see better outcomes.
So let's talk about, one of the things that made me a lot more comfortable as transition occurs is what we call a turnaround plan. I was very proud to have worked with a group of school officials, administration people, citizens, school union, to work together to build a turnaround plan for the district. And in other words, it's an actual dedicated, specific plan that sets up goals and objectives and standards to rebuild our system. And it really doesn't matter if it's receiver 1 or receiver 2, we're all kind of committed to following through that plan, right? So you have the plan on the table, and I know that when Jessica was here, she was following that plan, and then a recent committee, Russell Johnson, was following that plan. How do you feel about that plan? Again, I think people don't want to see change all the time. How do you feel that plan is? I know you had a chance to look at it somewhat. How do you feel that you're going to utilize that plan to continue the progress that's being made by the state? For
sure. Part of the process of determining to come here was a review of the plan, and to be sure that I could understand and support the direction that was set. And it's a well-crafted plan. I know a lot of people worked on it. And it reflects a deep understanding of educational research and what's best practice, and identifies really key buckets of areas, quality teaching and quality school climate, which, that translates. And what does that mean? It means kids being happy to come to school, teachers being happy to work in school, good relationships between teachers and students and families. Those things are really important. And then it starts to outline, how are we going to make those changes? What I'm going to add to that, and what I initially have started, is I took each element of that plan. Now it's how do we operationalize and measure. I really believe when we talk about implementing a plan like that, what's critically important is how are we supporting the people who are required to carry out the work. The teachers are going to be our front line in all this work. They're critically important. And their building principals, their leaders are critically important. And so I have to take the work that they've done. Of course, I'm going to give it a fresh look, a fresh set of eyes, but we need to continue to move forward those successful initiatives. The last thing we need to do is just start knee-jerk changing things based on some philosophy. I guess one of the advantages of having, I consider myself having a decent amount of experience, is I've seen people try a lot of things. And what I've learned is commitment to a direction and commitment to quality as you're going in a direction is more important than the latest research even, right? Because you have to make sure you're building a culture of how we do something. So it's very important to look at what's in place and build on the quality that's there. And there is, I got to tell you, I've been around the schools already, quite a few, and there's a lot of good things to build on.
No, I tell you, I talk with teachers and administrators all the time, and I got to tell you, what's great is that people in town hear about transition, and because at a high level we've transferred from superintendents to receivers, business managers. But what we haven't had is major changes in the middle school or the the lower level principal teacher stuff. Although we've gotten a bunch of new teachers, that's true. But the principals have been pretty stable. I know we're losing Andre recently, which is some really sad news. But I see great teachers, great administrators who are really working hard to improve the student environment, so to speak, and to improve education. So, that is continuing. Every day the teachers are in the field teaching your kids. I know that now we have pretty much a teacher for every classroom. There were some issues where we're short some teachers and we're filling in with substitutes. But now I'm told that in terms of the steadiness in the schools, I think every class has a teacher in place, and we're in a good situation, not just to finish this year, but also to build into next year. Is that true?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And it's important to invest in our teachers. And we need to be sure that we have thoughtful training and opportunities for them to continue to grow as professionals. One of the struggles all small communities like Southbridge will have is recruiting new folks just for when folks retire, or a teacher moves across the country, whatever it may be. We have to become a very attractive place for young and new educators, and one of the ways to do that is to be very purposeful in how we support our teachers. Make them our best advocates, our envoys to go out to colleges that prepare kids to become educators, and make them say, a good place to go and learn to be a good teacher is Southbridge. And that's certainly something we're going to be working on. And having quality leaders, like you said, in our buildings, our principals, is a good piece of that process.
One of the things we were talking about before we came into this television show is the principals. And I was telling you about, in conversation with principals, about how every time a new superintendent comes in, they feel like they have to re-sit down and re-justify everything they did because a new receiver, new superintendent come in and want to change everything. That's their concern, and they've worked really hard, a principal, on building their system. So tell me about how you feel, kind of allay a little bit of their concerns. How do you feel about working with a team? When I say team, part of your team is your principals. How do you feel? Are you looking to just all of a sudden come in and just rip everything apart, or are you going to take kind of a slow, steady hand to this process and build in change where it's needed, but use them as helping for good change? Because change means you have to have a partnership to kind of do it. If people don't buy in, it's hard to make it work.
Yeah, if leading means you look behind you, there's people behind you, right? And so, yeah, buy-in is really important. What I take to my leadership styles, first and foremost, I was a building principal, and so I've been in their shoes. And I believe they need to be involved in all of our major decisions. They need to be part of the deliberations and discussions about how things can be improved. because you have to have their insight to understand if a plan or a desire to change something is going to actually work. So supporting them is critically important. And my style is to build a management team, which includes principals. They're part of that. I also believe in reaching out to teachers directly and having teachers have input in giving me feedback as a leader and working with their leadership. So, you know, I think that the principals will see over time that they are going to continue to be valued, that their experience, their on the ground, their relationships with teachers, students, and families will help flavor our direction. And again, a lot of what they have in place, we need to continue to build on. So it's not a matter of dismantling, it's improving and continuing to invest in those key things that we believe will give us better outcomes.
You know, one of the key things we talked about as part of the turnaround plan was the issue of curriculum, right? And I think that pretty much the feeling was that in the elementary schools, the curriculum was pretty solid. And as we moved into the middle high school, the curriculum wasn't quite up to date with the state requirements and stuff. And I know that there's been a lot of effort at trying to improve that curriculum and also building in professional development with that as well. Because as you improve the curriculum, you also have to teach the teachers on how to improve their teaching methods, right? So tell me a little bit about curriculum, what your thoughts are, if you have any ideas for that, and what your thought is in terms of professional development for our teachers is.
Sure. So curriculum is really my wheelhouse. It's my doctorate work almost 20 years ago centered around curriculum and instruction. In most of my career, I've focused on pretty major curricular activities, revisions and adjustments. And what we're faced with really, not just in Massachusetts, but across our country is, you know, our standards and what we're asking kids to learn has changed dramatically. And that's because the work world has changed dramatically, and the skills that kids will need to be successful are continuing to evolve. And so we have to kind of raise the level and be sure that we're providing kids with rigorous activities that prepare them for those next jobs that we can't even imagine yet, you know, what's coming with particularly changes in technology. And to your point, when we change curriculum, first and foremost, teachers have to be part of that process. They need to understand the expectations. They also need to help us understand what resources they need to be successful when they're trying to help kids accomplish, you know, more and more complex tasks, you know, much more than what we experienced when we were in school, for sure. So those expectations are high. I believe it's really important that districts are very purposeful in teacher training and professional development, and that takes some coordination and long-term planning. It takes teacher voice, involving them in the process, and being very deliberate about what it is we're asking them to do. So as I've been looking, you know, that's an area where I believe I can help bring some coordination and help the team really focus on how are we helping our teachers be successful.
You know, 2 years ago when the state first came in, Jessica at the time, when she was a receiver, brought in these they were like little laptop computers, and she showed them to me, and the keys were missing. He says, "This is what I have to work with." I went, "What?" And I said, "You know, I almost didn't believe it, to be honest with you." So I made I didn't make an appointment. I called up the middle high school, and I talked to Jonathan Perrin at the time, who was the IT director, and I said, "I want to see these computers that you use in classes." And they brought out these big boxes. They get this, and I was stunned at how many of the keys were broken, and it was just ridiculous, right? So, you know, and they were showing that to me for a purpose that we need to have the very best technology for our children, right? So one of the things that we did working with town council, and I'm so supportive of town council has been there for the school system, is we gave money and new resources to buy Chromebooks for all the different kids, right? So now the kids aren't working with broken keyboards and stuff anymore. They're using the latest technology, and that's a big improvement. I mean, having a technology for kids to use that actually works, that's new, is critical in today's education world. We also put in some new books and stuff. And truthfully, it's kind of interesting that kids aren't using the books as much as they are. They can actually get courses online and do all kinds of things. So what we think, oh, everybody's got to have a book. It's a little different world today. So tell me about your thought with technology and how you believe that actually helps a student to learn, to grow, and to better educate themselves for the future.
Sure, and I can't tell you enough how appreciative I'm of the city supporting technology in the schools. That's a huge demonstration of support. Much like the new high school, middle school building shows.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's an incredible facility, and it just shows a deep level of support for education, which is really important. You know, technology is interesting. I have 6 children, so my oldest is 22, my youngest is 6. He'll actually be 7 this week. And I reflect on how school and technology has changed between their educations. And the candid truth around technology, more than anything, is we need it to engage kids, because the world that they live in is technology driven. Sometimes we make assumptions that kids understand technology better than we do, and that's not, I've seen it with my teenagers, it's not really true. They need to be taught how to use it appropriately. We also need to teach them information, right, history and science, so that when they use technology to look up information, they can verify whether or not what they're reading makes sense. Is this factual? Can I validate this source? It can help us teach kids all kinds of basic skills in a very efficient way. Again, my youngest child with an iPad learned letters, colors, numbers, shapes relatively independently. You know, was able to just engage in these activities, get feedback, and improve immediately. You mentioned textbooks. We certainly have to take a look at, and candidly, I'm not yet have a handle on this as a district, but you can save a lot of money if you look to open source, technology-driven type of textbooks on things like the Chromebooks that you guys supplied. That's a way, a couple things can happen. You cut down on the cost of the textbooks, which are quite expensive. A couple textbooks are the same investment as a Chromebook. It's amazing. Yeah. And you cut down on what kids are asked to carry all around. I don't know if you have kids carrying a backpack. Folks who have kids at home will know. You pick up those backpacks, it's a lot of weight. So we got to use technology in that way, but it engages kids. It helps them for that 21st century in the sense that we have to learn to collaborate. We have to work with people across technology, have meetings from different rooms, and engage in science experiments across the school, look up things, presentations, communications. There's a whole host of things. So that's a great first step that those pieces of technology are in our schools, and we'll build on that.
You know, this is an opportunity for me to say something that probably you don't often hear. The word thank you. You know, is the doctor is talking about, Dr. Villar is talking about, is the investment you as members of the community have made in our schools. We have a beautiful middle school, middle high school. We have new Chromebooks. We are doing everything we can to invest in our community, and it's because of you. You out there who have invested your tax dollars into helping the town. You know, when I talk about what a great job our police department is doing, our fire department, or different employees in town, it's all as a result of your contribution to the town. So let me take this as an opportunity on behalf of both of us to thank you for your support of this town. Now, to that end, I do want to kind of get back into the issue of facilities and management, right? So a big part of it is obviously having the technology, not just the Chromebooks, but all the other things, the whiteboards and the different things in the classroom. And I know that the middle high school is frankly pretty good in that area, right? So you have a new, and I know this is all new, Jonathan Parent, your IT director, great guy, trying to work hard. Tell me about that classroom experience. So it's quite different than we were kids. I mean, when I was a kid, you had a textbook, and you read the textbook, and the teacher gave you notes, so you took notes. Now, you can literally turn on your computer and talk to a teacher in Africa, and telling you, and actually showing you pictures of wild animals running by. You know, I mean, it's a different world. How do you think that new world has to be kind of incorporated into our school system?
Yeah, technology is great. I was a social studies teacher, and trying to explain to kids what the conditions of, say, the Civil War might have been, or you name the topic, having the ability now to have kids, well, let's log in and take a look at a quick clip, or let's take a look at some original documents that we can now see on the internet. These are photos of the actual thing. Or if you're a science teacher and you're learning about biology, you can take kids on virtual tours of tropical rainforests and different things. So it helps provide kids with a context to learn things, which is really important. Fundamental to all this is you have to, and I won't get too science on this, but you have to understand how human beings learn if you're going to effectively develop curriculum and teach children. And what's really important for all of us is context. You have to be there. You have to use it. You hear people say it all the time. I'll never use that when I get older. Well, if you don't use knowledge and skills, they kind of fade in your mind. So with technology, we can bring kids to experiments virtually, engage in things that we can't afford to do. I can't fly a bunch of kids to Brazil, but I can show them what a rainforest looks like. We can't afford to perhaps have kids dissecting a whole bunch of stuff, but you can do virtual dissections that are amazing now. So our curriculum really can begin to get very engaging, very exciting, and really start to help kids learn better because of the use of technology.
I want to talk about the engagement of parents in education, right? So I know that of families that are heavily engaged with their children, rarely do you see a child doing poor in school. If your mom and dad's involved and are making sure you're doing your homework and they're engaged in it, to me, I just see more successful students that way. So the more that you out there, you can engage in your children, make sure that they're doing their homework, looking at what they're learning. And if you have a problem, actually reaching out and talking to the superintendent, talking to your classroom teacher, I'm telling you, that'll go a huge way in making sure that your student is successful in life. Tell me about the importance of family engagement in a child's life, and what are you looking for? You're looking for parents who have problems to call you, to call your principals. How do you see that engagement with families? I think it's critical. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that, modern life, we define a family very differently now than we did maybe when I was a kid. But kids need supportive people around them, mom, dad, uncles, grandparents, extended family. They need people who support them. There's no doubt about it, because we all need a hand and support, and we need nurturing and love. So families are critically important that way. They can be our best partners in schools, helping us to understand what the child needs and what's shown them to be successful. Give us a heads up if there's an issue that occurred in the family. And you could just think of small things, or perhaps really large in the eyes of a family. Your pet passes away. That's going to interfere with learning for that child if the teachers aren't aware of that, and having that relationship. Making sure your child's reading when they get home and engaged in learning. Trying to bring them to places where there's exciting things, context to learn in. That's all really important. My personal belief about families is they all are trying to do their best. And my family when I was young didn't have a lot of resources, and so I understand how parents can struggle to try to support you. And my parents did a great job. It's the hardest work. Again, I have 6 kids, so I've been humbled by trying to raise children. They're a challenge.
They're work.
They are work.
They're work.
They'll do things that just, they humble you.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I encourage families to work with their teachers. Teachers, if there's an issue, you work with the teacher, you work with their principal. Always, if you're not satisfied with that, or there's something you think we've ignored or you need help with, I'm certainly willing to meet with families too. It's a partnership, and it's hard work raising kids, and the world makes it even harder.
Oh, it sure does. There's pressures, and
all kinds
you have to
of
live up
stuff.
to those pressures. Dr. Villar, I want to talk a little bit about you, okay? And I know you talked about the 6 kids. I think that's pretty cool, especially the different ages. It's just every kid is a different world to experience when they're at different ages. It's like in a transition from one age to another, and all of a sudden they're different people all the time. It's like trying to figure out what you do with your kid at a certain point in their life. First of all, they're dependent upon you as little. Then they get there where they know everything and you know nothing, and then eventually you tend to get smarter again as you get older. It's kind of a weird mix in how it goes.
Sure is.
But I want to talk about you. The district is now looking to you as a leader, right? And I've heard about your education, but the people out there, they know you're a doctor, so you've got a PhD, and they know that you come as a receiver, so your education must be good. I want to talk about some of the towns you managed, and one in particular that I like, and I'm a Connecticut guy. I think most of you know that, and I know that some people get mad at me saying this, but Connecticut and Massachusetts are very much alike, and the terms are different, but the government process is pretty much the same. So a transition from Connecticut to Massachusetts, in my opinion, after 2.5 years, is not a very big transition. People, they believe it is, but I just don't see it. But I want to talk about, I know that you were, I think, an assistant superintendent in Meriden. Is that what you were?
Yeah, the title was associate superintendent, so very similar. Yeah.
So Meriden is a city I'm familiar with from Connecticut. Meriden is a much larger kind of city than Southbridge, but it has some of the same kind of things. Southbridge is a town, but it's very much a city for a lot of reasons. It has the multitude of multifamily housing, very diversified. It's a poorer community. It has some issues that is very much like Meriden. Meriden is a bigger Southbridge from what I see. But tell me how you believe that Meriden experience, because it's very much a Southbridge experience, it's just on a larger scale, how you believe that's going to help you here in Southbridge. Because I found my hometown was very much like here. It scares me to think how much the two are alike. They were like different places, but same kind of thing, Yeah. Tell me how Meriden's going to help you in your experience and your you being an assistant superintendent or principal. How's that going to transcend into Southbridge and improving the quality?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I try to build off of all my experiences, and I do agree. In my limited time here, it feels very similar. It's a New England town, and so there's that New England culture. Meriden, again, larger school system for sure, but you're right, very similar issues. And I spent nearly a decade working there, and I started as an assistant principal in a middle school, and then I went to a high school, and then I became a middle school principal, and then the associate superintendent. So I oversaw about 1,000 teachers, so quite a few more than we have here. But got to understand and see the dynamics of working with diverse families and helping lead folks to improvements. For example, my middle school, we had disciplinary issues there, and we reduced climate issues by 40% in a year while raising academic performance, which is really important. And more important, I add sometimes, is that teachers were also feeling pretty good about things, right? So to me, all those data points are really important. So it's about honest improvement overall. And then we took that across the district and implemented the same approach across 8 elementary schools and 2 middle schools and saw success. In the 4 years that we did curricular revision, we saw huge improvements in language arts and mathematics in that district. It took good 4.5 years of work, and you started to see real hard measurable, hard data, not small items, but measurable state test improvements across all sets of students. It was about building a leadership team, about working with the community. We had a great relationship with the town there too, critically important. Good facilities. We worked together to manage that. We worked together to manage the financial issues that all towns and communities face. And we supported our workforce, which I think is really important.
You know, it's interesting because as you know, Southbridge is not a very wealthy community, so we fight hard to give the resources you need for the system, and what we demand or what we try to push on is that we get a good return for our investment, right? So, I listen to the school committee talk, I hear people talk, okay, we got a new receiver, like when's the system going to be better? Is it going to be better next year, in July of next year, the system should be... It's not going to happen like that, folks. And I don't care what receiver you bring in. This is a slow, steady process. It took a lot of years to have our system decline. It's going to take a lot of years to rebuild our system. But it takes quality leadership and dedication by the teachers and principals and everybody to make that progress. And truthfully, I see that progress happening, and I feel good about it. But if you're looking to have, Princeton in a year, you're just not going to see it. It's going to be slow and steady. And I know that they asked you, and he said last night, it could take 5 years before the system is where I'd like it to be. It's a slow, steady process. Tell us about that. Next year, is the system going to be perfect? Tell me about the realistic transition from where we are to where we want to be.
I think what's really important for people to understand is on an individualized basis for each child, I think we can expect children to feel good about our schools right now. I was in the schools yesterday. I went to every school. Lots of smiling kids having a good time, right? Learning, teachers enjoying teaching. Sometimes we get weighed down by some of the negative data, but in reality, we have a lot of really successful kids in our system. We have one on the school committee, incredibly articulate young lady going to college. So our system is producing good results for kids. It's not for all kids, and that's the issue. We have to adjust so that all kids have a chance of being super successful. It takes a long time. Part of the issue is we're in this perfect storm in the sense that the state standards, the expectation of our education system, all that has increased over the last 10 years to really high levels. So we are competing now to hit targets that we never dreamed of 50 years ago with kids. And the interesting part people need to understand is kids can do it. Kids are doing it. They're hitting these high targets. They're demonstrating incredible skills at earlier and early ages, thinking super critically. But for us to transform a system where that always happens, because that's really the goal, and to say, hey, you know what, we're going to take kids and they come in at a certain level, we're going to move them to a higher level. Every child is going to improve in our system. We're going to meet their needs. That means changes in curriculum, which means for a teacher, that's a lot of work. Whenever we say, willy-nilly, change curriculum. Well, for a teacher, that means what I do tomorrow might be very different to what I'm used to doing. And I have to rethink how I engage kids in every activity. That's a lot of work for a teacher, and to reimagine that. And then we do it in multiple content areas. So teachers in elementary in particular, they have to teach kids language arts, which is reading and writing, spelling, handwriting, all of that, while they teach the math and history and science. And we change all the standards. So, of course, there's a lot for them to learn and relearn. Yep. That's why that takes time. And building a system that supports all kids will take time.
I have an HR director here in my office, and she has a daughter in school, and the daughter's doing extremely well in the high school level and going on and getting ready to graduate, obviously, this year and moving into college. And this student is awesome. I mean, and she's awesome, too, not just because of the school system, but because I know her mother is on her case and there and making sure that not only is she having a good education environment, but her outside life of, she's involved in dance and other kinds of things, that is building and shaping her whole person, her as a full person. And that's really, I think that anyone that has a strong parent structure behind them that's working with a student, they're going to be successful, even if the school has a little bit of weakness in areas, because parents make up that difference. Yes, we got to continue building and make sure that everything is as good as it could possibly be to. But again, parents make a big impact. Family, so family, whatever family is, makes a big impact on that. And I think you're right. There's students out there doing phenomenal in our system. They're going to become the next, congressman or president or whatever it might be. We see great success. We just want to make it stronger, better for all students, right?
Absolutely. It's really important that we meet the needs of every child. If you take a step back and think about it from a society perspective, it's in all of our combined best interests that every child that goes to our schools gets the best education possible. Even if they don't have a supportive environment, if they have a difficult living condition, which some kids do, we have to be sure that we help them be as successful as possible, because at the end of the day, they're part of our society, and they're going to be our friends, our neighbors, and I would like to have as educated as possible friends and neighbors and workers and parts of my community. And so to me, it's a mission we all need to embrace. It's the right thing to do for people, and when supported, all kids can learn at high levels. There's no doubt.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was an young Italian kid, and there was the little Italy part of town, and there was a Polish part of town, there was a Irish part of town. It was all kind of separate. It's the same kind of diversity we have now. It was just different groups is what it really was, And today you're seeing more, I see more and more, obviously Latino population is getting larger in the United States, seeing more of the Indian population, Pacific population. People talk about diversity now, but there's always been diversity. People were kind of painted with a broad brush no matter what nationality you were. So, I think we have to help the kids of today, whoever they are, wherever, whatever country, and here it's Latino because we have a large Latino population. A lot of people come in from Puerto Rico, and I find that they have the warmest people. They've been unbelievably positive with me. Now, every kid can learn at the same pace. So, you can't discount any kid no matter what race or religion they're from or whatever it might be. I said when I first came in on the turnaround team, and it was 19% of the kids can't speak English because they come into the country from Puerto Rico, which is a part of the United States. People want to believe it or not, but it is, part of our country. And they're at school, and there's no one teaching them English. Well, what do you do? If you're a student, think of yourself. Put yourself in another country in a school where everybody speaks a different language than you, and you can't speak the language and learn. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be hanging out in the hall. You're going to be trying to do something. May not be the best thing because you have nothing to. It's nice to see that they built up the ESL to where those kids now are not hanging around the hall. They're focused and now trying to learn, and it gives them that chance and opportunity. So I'm really proud of our Latino community and how they've engaged in a lot of ways with our school system. I hate to say any group is something we should focus on more, but they need a little extra help because they're learning that language and thing. How do you being Cuban descendant and speaking Spanish, how do you deal with the large population of Latino children that are going to be part of this system? And what do you see in terms of helping them progress and become more comfortable and welcome and feeling good about where they live?
Yeah, there's a few issues there. One, for the folks who are arriving because of the hurricane, those poor children are traumatized, so we have to support them. Imagine your house being destroyed and your neighborhood's gone, and now you're shipped off to a part of your country, because they are a part of the United States, but a different part, in a different, where people speak a different language, and you may or may not have good capacity in that. In the eyes of a young child, that is a significant change. That's a heavy load for that child to carry. So we have to find ways to support them emotionally and socially. From an instructional part, embracing their culture and their language and building on that and helping them learn English. I'm a strong supporter of the dual language program that's been put in place here in town. It's good for kids of both cultures. So English-speaking children can learn Spanish at a high level, and Spanish-speaking children will learn English. it really has research has shown it'll be very effective for both groups of kids. I think it could be a program that we can be really proud of. Super helpful for the children that don't speak English in particular, because it gives them a real high-quality shot at mastering English. Research tells us it takes a long time to learn a language at a high level. And so we do need to support it. You've mentioned several times ESL teachers, very important. We have, essentially I'll call it a new arrival center for kids, where they're helping them acclimate to our schools first so that they can come in and be successful. It's really important to be supportive of that. At the end of the day, sure, the expectation is all kids will come out of our schools mastering English as a language, critically important to their success. But we also, to the extent to which they're masters of Spanish and English, we're giving them a great tool to be successful as they move forward, embracing their culture, adding to our country. As you said, this is a country of immigrants. Mm-hmm. We should be proud of all folks of diverse backgrounds.
Well, I look at it this way, too. I look at diversity in Southbridge as one of our strongest assets. People from all different types of cultures blending together, and frankly, that's why I think makes America great. I really do. I believe the culture is good, and I'm not. Forget about the debate, the immigration debate in the country. I don't want to get into that craziness, but the people we have here working together, all together, to bring their cultures together, to get to know each other, Frank. And sometimes I think that's the hardest thing is people don't know each other. So when I first met a lot of Latino community, I don't know their culture. And the more I learned about the people, the more I went to one of the churches and stuff, and I learned about how much I love the culture. And I was like, I didn't know anything about this culture. And that's part of the fear is people are afraid of what they don't know. And I think that you find as you get to meet people from different cultures, you get past that fear and go, oh, wow, that's really not what my head thought. And it really can be our strongest asset in town of having all cultures kind of work together to make Southbridge a wonderful place to live and to work and to raise a family and do those things. I believe that sincerely. Or frankly, I wouldn't be at Southbridge if I didn't. So I think we've got to work together as a community to build that and bring those cultures forward and sharing those things. I'm very proud of my Italian culture. I couldn't speak a word of Italian, but I'm very proud that I'm Italian and my family is from Italy. And as you go through it, truthfully, as you go through years and years and generations, you kind of lose some of that,
Yeah, sure.
I don't know Italian like my dad did, and I don't know the history of Italy. I'm not connected. But there's a lot of people when they first come here, but whatever nationality they're more full of that culture, and they're not yet what I would call Americanized, or have kind of lost that as generations go by. So we need to adapt and work with whatever culture it is that's here, right?
Yeah, assimilation takes time, and my own experience is the same. Again, I can speak Spanish, but boy, am I much better speaking English, right? Mm-hmm. It's my dominant language, and folks who speak with me in Spanish will see that immediately. But I'm proud to be able to maintain my culture. I'm very proud of my culture and my history, the background. Love to say, I'm Hispanic, I'm Latino. I think that's important. I think that's the power of our country is you can be proud of where you come from.
It's who we are, be you Irish, be you Italian, be you Black, be whatever it is. You should be proud of who you are as a person. That's part of what made you special, and that's really, really great. Hey, I know we're getting closer to kind of an end of this show, but there's some more topics that I want to touch base on, so we're going to go a little bit longer. We're talking about an education turnaround, and that means improving curriculum and improving all the features of education. But there's another side component to that people don't think about, and what I'm talking about is this is also a financial turnaround, right? We have to look at how we can utilize those dollars, those taxpayers' dollars that you give to us, to improve the financial side of the house as well, to make sure that we are investing properly, that we're paying our bills, that every dollar spent is being spent wisely and useful, and getting, as I quote, we heard it over and over, the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak. So, and I know that we have a new finance manager that the state brought in, a finance person, and he's working very hard at kind of rebuilding that financial structure. Tell me a little bit about that thought process and how important it is to make sure that as we build a strong education, we also have that strong financial group behind us to make sure that those two kind of work together, and that not only do we have quality education, but we do it at a price we can afford, right?
Yeah, and again, I think some of my previous experiences help with this. My last job, I worked for a council that was headed by CEOs of major international corporations, mm-hmm. and a lot of interactions with them about efficiencies and learning some business practices. And I think the application of that to education is really important. And first and foremost, what is being done is to be sure that the financial house is in complete order. And that means partnering with Townside. And my understanding, again, this is day 3. My understanding is the town has bent over backwards to support the work that's going on in the schools to make sure that those systems are in order, which I'm very grateful for as I step in. And now we're starting to turn that corner. But we have antiquated systems still. I saw payroll for the first time. It's still a paper-driven process. Last check, it's 2018, right? So this should be electronic. It'll help cut down on errors. It cuts down on time. So ultimately, we'll save money. As I think of educational sides, so we have the business side that we have to be sure is in complete order, using the right software and systems to ensure accuracy and efficiency. I apply that thinking to how we deliver educational services too. Sometimes you can do something in 2 ways, and one way is both equally successful, but one's less expensive. So we have to look at that. We talked about it a little bit around Chromebooks and textbooks, and are there ways to cut cost and still deliver a quality service? We have to apply the mentality to our budgets, because candidly, municipal budgets aren't getting bigger, right? In a sense, they're not getting bigger with free funding that we can spend. Yeah. It's either more demand on a local taxpayer, more reliance on state aid. At the end of the day, we got to be efficient in our expenditures. And so investing in systems, I think, is really important.
So, just so people understand, the town of Southbridge obviously struggles with its finances, right? So the town has really tried to keep the town side of government's expenses as low as possible, because we know we need to give added resources to our school system, because frankly, from my point of view, how the school system goes, the town goes. By improving our quality of education, by improving our school system, truthfully, it improves the property values in town. People want to live in a town where there's a good school system. So it's in our interest as individuals to ensure that we have a quality school system, because it does things like improve the value of the property that you own. Your own house will go up in value. Commercial property goes up in value. You're able to attract better business people because they want to bring their families to a place where there's a good education. The education component of a town is extremely, extremely important. So yes, the town council has added resources, more so to the school system than to the town, for that purpose. It's because we know it's a partnership. We know that we both have to be successful, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to work with you. And obviously, the state's given added money. I know they put in a couple of extra $1 million into this district to improve it. So we're making that commitment. And I want to talk a little bit about, there's been a restructuring in how we pay our teachers. There's been an incentive plan. We have struggled to get quality teachers here in Southbridge, and under the past leadership, they built in a new kind of incentive program. They increased salary for certain kinds of teachers and things, because we want the very best and brightest to come and stay, not just come to Southbridge, but stay in Southbridge. Because we get teachers to come in and say, okay, I'm going to learn here in Southbridge. I'm going to go to some private school, or I'm going to go to some easy school to learn in, where all the kids are perfect and everything is great. It's a rich community. We need to keep those teachers here. So I know that's important, but how does teachers' salaries? We got to compete with the marketplace, right? Tell me about why that's important, that we have salaries structured in such a way as it meets the demand of the marketplace and keeps teachers here.
So the historic way, or the traditional way of teachers being paid in the vast majority of school systems across New England and probably our country, is really based on 2 factors: the amount of time they have been an employee and the amount of education that they have that's applicable. And so it's a scale where each year you progress and you get a little more money each year. Here in Southbridge, as a part of this turnaround plan, they've gone to what often is referred to as a career ladder pay scale, which incentivizes teachers to improve performance in their skill sets. And so a new teacher can come in and in a relatively short period of time move up the ladder if they demonstrate that they're proficient in making a difference in student performance, and that they're demonstrating the right skill sets, and have accomplished good teaching strategies. So what it does is, if you're a hardworking young teacher, the real go-getter, this might be the community you want to invest your time in, because here we're going to move you up that ladder a little quicker than if you were to go out to a traditional pay scale community. And conversely, if for some reason a teacher hasn't progressed, they're not just getting a raise every year. And, you know, some folks from a business perspective say, hey, that's a good idea. Like, we don't want to just give out a raise. We want to encourage performance. So that's the idea behind the career ladder, is to encourage growth and improvement and invest in people who are demonstrating that they're really making a big difference.
You know, one of the things we've seen in the past is that parents have been taking the kids out of our school district and sending them to either trade schools or the new charter school in Southbridge. I really want to encourage you to keep your kid in our system. Our system is improving. It's getting better and better and stronger and stronger. When you do take your kid out and you move to our district, it takes money out of our school system and it moves it to someplace else. We really want to keep as much resources as possible in our district so that we can grow and we can improve. The state is kicking in extra money too, but I do see that improvement. And you know, really, I think the focus is you have your kid in our school system. You also want to make sure your child is getting the services that they need. So you need to reach out to the teachers. You need to reach out to the principals. You need to reach out to the superintendent. I'm telling you, your student is going to be successful if you care enough to make sure that they're successful. So I think that's really a key component. It's the new receiver's job and my job and the teachers and the principals, everybody's job, to do everything we can to make sure that students get the resources and the education they need. I mean, what would you say to parents who, you know, might consider leaving our school district? How do you feel about our future?
Yeah, you know, while I respect everyone's right to make a choice, what I would encourage them to do is take a look at what we do offer. Because sometimes schools of choice don't have what we offer, right? And again, we've just talked a lot about the power of diversity, but we have a very diverse population. That gives kids a great skill set to move into the world. Because when you get to the workforce, it's going to be a diverse workforce. Mm-hmm. So understanding people from different cultures is a huge, huge positive that we provide kids here. Then there's also the improvements in the instructional program, the improvements in technology. We have caring principals and teachers. That I can see for sure in just a short time. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that there's also extracurricular activities and social activities that our schools offer, community-based as well. So there's a lot to consider when you're moving your child to a different school. And again, it may be the right choice for a family, but I would encourage them to really take a hard look at what we can provide. Give us an opportunity. If there's an issue or concern, let's talk about it and see if there's a way we can resolve that. Because the ultimate goal is to provide everyone's child with a great education.
This is a good opportunity to thank our school committee. I know they feel frustrated that they're not running the system, but I want to thank them. They give up their free time. They are volunteers who have generously decided to volunteer their time because they want to make the school district better. I'm hoping and I believe that those committee members are going to work with our new receiver to improve the quality of education for our children. But I want to thank them especially, and I know it's frustrating to them, and I'm encouraging them to really develop that kind of relationship with the new receiver to think about how we can make this town stronger, better, and improve the lives of our kids. And also to the town council, who has done a great job in providing resources. Let me tell you, I know because I work with them in the budget issues, they've worked really hard to provide the needed resources to our school system. They've been here to support them. I want to thank my counselors who again, they volunteer their time, they run for office, they don't get a dime for it. They put up with all kinds of pressure and people that love them and hate them. The nature of being a volunteer and making tough decisions is you get a lot of people mad at you. And there's a few out there that'll be mad at us, but we keep on plugging. You know, Doctor, I want to welcome you to the system. I want you to know from the town manager's office you're going to get all the support that I can lend to you. And you'll also get, when I have concerns, you'll also hear those as well. You're obviously invited to my department head meetings. As far as I'm concerned, you're an essential part of our team. You have your own team in the school system, but you're a part of the team, what I call Team Southbridge, my department heads. You're always going to be welcome. Your team's welcome. Our police department and our fire department are going to work with you on public safety issues. Yes. Our DPW is going to work with you on snow issues. Our town accountant finance team is going to work with you on financial issues at school. So we're together. We rise and fall together. And listen, I don't like to fall, so we're going to rise. And I know I'm hearing from you that passion of, you know, I want to make this successful. I want to be a team person. I want to work with everybody. That's where you're at. Why don't you give you a last minute or two just to say whatever you like?
Well, you know, again, thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome that I've gotten from many, many people here in town. We've got a lot of work to do, but we also have a lot to be proud of. And I think that sometimes people focus on negative. We got to focus on what we can do to improve, but build on the quality things that are in place. A lot of people have thought real hard in the last 4 or 5 years about what we can do. Working as a partner is critical. This is work that you can't do by yourselves. Raising children, teaching children, it's a community effort. We have to do it together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm Ron San Angelo, Southbridge Town Manager. I'm here with Dr. Jeffrey Villar, our new receiver. I think we're going to do everything we can to foster that team environment, and we want you to be part of our team. We want to continue making Southbridge a beautiful place to live, obviously to work and to raise a family. We're going to put in our effort. We ask you to join us in that process. Thank you again for enjoying our show. I hope you learned a lot, and you can see we have a great future ahead of us. We just got to work hard to achieve it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you. Well done.